To go along with the Arizona overview, I will cover a few interesting facts here that didn't make it into that video, for either time constraints or lack of a proper place to put them in. This is going to earn the short story designation, as it's a tight focus on just these few facts. To begin, as mentioned in the video itself, Arizona had a stint as a movie star. Not the only Navy ship to do so at the time. Saratoga is rather famous for doing the same. The movie she starred in would prove to be something of an ill-fated omen for the two ships present. Not for anything in the content of the movie, but for the fact that both would have less than pleasant ends. I do doubt anyone making Here Comes the Navy had any idea of that, though. Arizona, of course, needs no explanation. The other ship involved, if you stretch the definition of ship to the breaking point, was USS Macon. This airship was a flying aircraft carrier and was lost in a storm not long after the movie was released. Again, like I said, pretty bad omen for those two. Moving back to Arizona, the remaining facts will all relate, in some form or another, to the Pearl Harbor attack. Not very surprising, I can imagine. First, there's Admiral Kidd. Isaac Kidd, as I mentioned before, will forever be tied to Arizona. He was her captain in the late 30s, and would become her admiral not that long, in the grand scheme of things, before the attack. It was during that attack that all reports indicate Kidd, and Arizona's captain, stood on her bridge fighting the ship. He was there right up until the explosion that destroyed his ship, commanding her until the last. In doing so, he became both the highest-ranked casualty of the attack and the first American flag officer to ever be killed by foreign attack. Kidd's body would, sadly, never be found. There honestly might not have been a body to find. All that was ever located was his Naval Academy ring fused to a bulkhead on the bridge. I figure you can make your own conclusions on that. The only other remains were a trunk of his personal belongings discovered in the wreck. These were sent to his widow, where they remained in an attic until his children found the trunk and its contents. These are now on display in the Arizona Memorial Museum. On a related note that came up during research for the video, in a haunting foreshadowing of the Sullivan brothers, there were apparently multiple sets of brothers, and one father and son, killed aboard her during the attack. Moving to another thing discovered during the research. During the salvage operations, one of the ship's bells was removed and lumped in with other salvaged materials. As the other bell was saved, I can only assume this was a mistake on the part of those doing the salvage, because this bell would be rediscovered, silently rusting away, in a scrapyard in Bremerton. Had it not been found, it is quite likely it would have been melted down, like so much other scrap, and lost to history. Considering how important a bell is to any ship, to the point they sometimes get handed down between namesake vessels, this would have been an incredible shame. That said, the story of how the bell was found, and how it got from there to the University of Arizona, is something of a foggy one. There are conflicting accounts that it was either found in 1942 or 1944 by one man or another. I suppose, though, that the finer details can be argued forever. What truly matters is that the bell was saved and to this day remains in pride of place at the university, one of very few artifacts to survive outside of Hawaii. Finally, at least for this video, some years ago there was a documentary for PBS that was filmed inside the wreck of Arizona that went deeper than anyone had ever been allowed to see before. In addition to the expected silt and battle damage, this footage would find remarkably intact artifacts of the ship. Uniforms still hanging on their coat racks, for example. 80 years underwater and the uniform still being intact at all, let alone hanging in place, that just shows how little oxygen is in that part of the ship. If you haven't already watched that documentary, track it down. It's already been uploaded on YouTube, though you'll understand why I won't link it. But those uniforms, soap dishes still sitting on cabinet shelves, mirrors still in place and not shattered by the explosion, phones still sitting on desks that haven't rotted away. It's a window into a time that no other shipwreck can quite show you, not even other relatively intact ones in the Pacific battlefields.